Coping with COVID with Tre Tailor. Updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. Brought to you by SCDHEC. Visit scdhec.gov for testing and vaccination sites. SCDHEC. Healthy people, healthy communities. In it together, SC and the South Carolina Diabetes Advisory Council presenting Wellness Wednesday every week on Coping with COVID. The City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, helping to meet the needs of small, minority, and women-owned businesses in the City of Columbia. Agape Counseling and Training Services. If you're having a challenge coping with COVID, visit Agape Counseling and Training Services at agapects.com. The Comet Bus System, offering free rides to get your COVID vaccine. Don't miss your shot. Visit catchthecomet.gov. Javis Financial Services, with over 20 years of experience. Computers Unique, Dutch Square Mall. Honest, professional, reliable computer sales and service. Palmetto Media Connections, connecting media and communities together. Coping with COVID from SCDHEC. In it together, SC, the South Carolina Diabetes Advisory Council, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, Agape Counseling and Training Services, the Comet Bus System, Javis Financial Services, Computers Unique, and Palmetto Media Connections.
Coping with COVID with Tre Tailor.
Hey there. Thank you so much for joining us for Coping with Tre Tailor. I'm Tre Tailor, here to help you because we are always coping with something. We are streaming live on the Tailor Made production page. That's the home of Coping with Tre Tailor. Please go over there, hit like and share and follow, and find out when we go live every Wednesday for Wellness Wednesday from In It Together SC and the Diabetes Action Council, and then on Thursday and Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Coping with Tre Tailor. Hey, don't forget, scrolling at the bottom of the screen, you'll see all types of resources about COVID testing, vaccination, job opportunities, back to school information, and so much more. So please post and share so we can get the message to the masses. We also have a comment section. If you want to ask a question, we'll be glad to get it to our guests. We had been updating you a couple of weeks ago about the Roe versus Wade ban, the decision, the reversal of the very important law for men and women everywhere. And attorney Tameika Devine, who is a 20-year veteran from politics, joined us last month to tell us all about it. And she promised, and she's here to update us more. Hey, Tameika, thank you so much for joining us today on Coping. I appreciate you. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here. And thank you for always just making sure that the right information gets out there to the public.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This was a big one. And you and Diaska, joined us last month when the decision was first made. We're almost, about 3 weeks now since it happened. Tell us what has happened since.
Well, this is a constant topic that there's a lot of things happening. So there's a ton of things happening here in the state of South Carolina and nationally. The day that I and Diaska joined you last month, well, I had left the State House,
Right.
unable to testify, but I was there to testify about the House bill in a special ad hoc committee that our state had put together in the House to look at an abortion ban. Well, I have to say that after, a day of lots of people being there, several people like me who were unable to testify, the ad hoc committee actually passed the ban on to the full Judiciary Committee. And so they had one other meeting after the meeting that we went to. They did not take any public comment, which is really disheartening but expected. And then they passed it out. And so the week of August 15th, the House will be having public hearings and looking at this bill again. But the current bill as it stands, as written here in South Carolina on the House side, is a full abortion ban from conception until birth. And so right now we do have a 6-week ban. The fetal heartbeat ban bill is in effect here in South Carolina. But if this new bill passes, that literally upon conception, you cannot have an abortion if you find out that you are pregnant. And the only exception that this current bill has is for to save the life of the mother. But there are very stringent restrictions to determine whether or not the abortion would save the life of the mother. So that is being debated in the House of Representatives. A comparable bill has been introduced in the state Senate. And they will also have hearings that same week, August 15th. So August is a big month for us here in the state of South Carolina. If people want to have their voices heard, August 15th, that week is the big week to make sure that you're contacting your legislators. But the state is also, the Medical Affairs Committee in the State House and the State Senate will be debating a very comparable bill that, again, is a full abortion ban that will not make any exceptions. So, we've got a lot here happening in South Carolina. And I will have to say that the way the tides are turning, it's not favorable for abortion here in South Carolina. So we need all electors or all voters to make their voices heard. Contact your legislators, let them know your opinion, ask the questions. And if you can come to the State House the week of August 15th, I'm sure there will be lots of public hearings as well as rallies to make sure that you're out there.
So how does this bode for places like Planned Parenthood, Daybreak, places that help women and men with their choice, their decisions as far as abortion and child rearing are concerned?
Well, these bills that are being proposed actually have some criminal penalties. And so what it would do to places like Planned Parenthood and Daybreak that provide even information on abortion and potentially, access, if we ban abortion and then they try and help someone leave the state to get abortion, there could potentially be criminal penalties for them. And so it's very scary as to where we're going in the state. I will say Planned Parenthood actually did sue the state on abortion. And so that initial hearing was held in front of Richland County Judge Casey Manning, and he actually referred it to the state Supreme Court. And so the state Supreme Court will be rendering some kind of decision to actually stop the fetal heartbeat bill that we have currently enacted. They were trying to stop that at this point. And so that is now before the South Carolina Supreme Court. But, really back to your question, any providers who just even provide information, not urging people to make a decision one way or other, but providing information, those employees could face potential criminal penalties, which is very scary.
Yeah. How does this impact the funding that these organizations receive? Because a lot of them receive funding from the federal government.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say that, the Biden administration has been very clear on their support of access to abortion throughout the state. And so, the president actually has done 2 executive orders since the last time I was here with you. And so he is doing everything within his power to protect the rights. And so it's not going to affect them as far as getting federal funding, but it will affect them as far as state funding, which, that has been in the works for many years. And I think their state funding has been little to none anyway. But what it does, in addition to potentially, affecting their funding, like I said, is it will impact their ability to provide the services, especially in areas where people do not have relationships with primary caregivers. I mean, we have several counties here in the state of South Carolina that do not even have OBGYNs. And so a lot of folks get their reproductive health care access through organizations like Planned Parenthood. Mm-hmm. And so if they are severely underfunded, if their staff feels like they have criminal liabilities, it will affect their ability to actually provide that service that they are currently providing in our state.
Wow. Attorney Tameika Devine joins us today on Coping with Tre Tailor. I'm Tre Tailor. She's giving us an update as far as what's happened since the Roe versus Wade decision. Tameika, South Carolina, we're neighboring to North Carolina, and it's just night and day pretty much how their government is handling this whole abortion situation. Can you kind of update us on what's going on in North Carolina?
Yeah, well, definitely. So, I say all the time, elections have consequences, elections matter. And so, it's night and day, and that we're neighboring states, and a lot of folks, throughout the country kind of lump us together. They say the Carolinas, North and South Carolina, but it is night and day when you look at it. And so, there their governor, their legislature has taken, a different posture as it relates to abortion. And so North Carolina has become what people call a safe haven. And so, as I mentioned before, Planned Parenthood and others, because we currently have the 6-week ban, which, a lot of women don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks of pregnancy. And so, even what we currently have in place significantly affects people's access to abortion here in the state of South Carolina right now, even without these new bills that potentially could pass. And so right now, Planned Parenthood and other organizations, if there are women are people who want to access abortion and they can't do it here in the state of South Carolina, they are going to other states such as North Carolina, which is our neighboring state, to go ahead and do that. And so there are local organizations that are helping fund those kind of efforts to allow people to be able to go to North Carolina. But North Carolina has seen an influx in people coming to that state to get abortions because some of the neighboring states like South Carolina have made it really difficult for people to access abortion.
So what is what are the rules? What are the laws in North Carolina as opposed to South Carolina that women and men can go to?
So for North Carolina, of course, they don't have that 6-week ban.
Right.
And so, their ban on abortion is more, kind of like their state laws mirror what Roe v. Wade allowed access to. And so, if you are, if you are 12 weeks and you discover you're pregnant and you decide, for health reasons or whatever else that you want to have access to abortion, you're able to then go and get access to that in North Carolina. And so that's really the difference. There's no telling that whether or not similar bills will be introduced in North Carolina in the future. But right now, their posture has been very different than South Carolina. South Carolina, even before the official decision of Roe v. Wade, our governor said that the legislature could come back off season, which this right now, and I'm talking about these hearings August 15th, normally our legislature is not meeting at this time. They are supposed to be in recess, but he allowed them to be able to come back just to be able to handle this. And so, so other states, potentially in their normal legislative season may entertain things, but right now that's not been the case.
And that's so interesting. That says so much about whether good or bad, positive or negative, how much they deem this important to pass or not pass, for them to come back on their office season. So right now, it is not illegal to travel out of state if you want to get abortion services, because as you say, North Carolina and Florida, which is someplace else that we talked about before we came on the air, both of those states are becoming Southern safe haven. So it is against the law for organizations to give you information about where to go, but it's not against the law if you already know to go, correct?
Correct. Well, and it's not against the law yet for the organizations to give you the information. That's part in the proposed bill. But yeah, it is right now it is against the law if it's the fetal heartbeat. If the heartbeat can be detected, you cannot get an abortion in the state. But yeah, that travel, that's going to be really hard. And I'm just being honest, as an attorney, I think that has a lot of constitutional issues. And, certainly I would hope that immediately gets challenged if that passes. Although I didn't get a chance to testify, I did watch the testimony and I watched the conversation and the debate by the legislators. And it's very disheartening because I think they've made up their mind that they want to criminalize anybody giving people information, giving people rights, giving people access. And the really disheartening part is at the hearing, there were a lot of doctors, OBGYNs, who were there to testify that did not get an opportunity to testify. And then even those who did, their opinions were really discounted. But I think there are a lot of doctors, medical professionals who are very, very concerned about the way our law is and about that information, because that's really part of their job, is to be able to give their patients all information, so that they're fully informed before they make a decision. So it's going to be really interesting to see when that passes, and I hate to say I believe it probably will pass, but I'm not saying that to say people please contact your legislators, because that's the only way we will get it not to pass, or at least to get it less punitive, is if voters engage. And so, that actually brings me to, and I know you and I talked about offline about Kansas. This week or last week, Kansas had an election, and this was on the ballot, and the voters overwhelmingly voted to keep access to abortion as part of, in Kansas. 59% voted. And when you look at the other things, the other races that were on the ballots, that part of that 59% were Republicans voting as well. So this is not a Democrat-Republican issue. This is an issue about, a woman's right to choose. And I think that if more states give the electorate the ability to vote, I think you'll see more things like that. But we've got to let the people that we elect know how we feel as voters. And so we've got to reach out to them and let them know what our opinions are. We might not have it on the ballot, but these people are on the ballot, and so they need to hear from us.
Yeah. I'm glad you reiterated that, because it always comes down to, you gotta vote. Everything comes down to, yes, let your voice be heard. But how do you let your voice be heard? It's not sitting at the beauty salon or the barbershop, or even, bitching and complaining on social media. You gotta vote.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say a lot of people, and I have a lot of folks who engage with me on social media, and I love it. But what I always share with them is, like, telling me and commenting and whatever is one thing, but actually sharing that with your legislators and then getting to vote. And then not just you personally coming out to vote, but other folks, bringing other folks and encouraging other folks to get to the ballot is critically important. Here in South Carolina, I mean, we have, and this may sound partisan, and this really is not partisan. It's just facts. I mean, and when you look at the way that our state has been run over the last 20, 30 years, it has been predominantly in one party's hands, and you've not seen significant changes. And so, it's funny when people see, you elect one Democrat or one Black person or whatever, you think they're going to change the world and make your life immediately better. They can't do it all. And so when you look at who controls our state, who controls us expanding Medicaid, who controls our funding to education, who controls our access to abortion, and whether in what our kids are being taught in school. All those things are being debated at the State House, and we're not, and they're being debated while we're at work. And so, of course, I understand we're not always can go up to the State House, but you can call your legislators, you can email them, you can send them letters, you can vote, and you can get other people to vote. But the only way we're going to actually change outcomes for the citizens of South Carolina is if we get more people, good people, elected, and that we stay engaged with the folks that we have elected. So we've got to vote. And then once we vote people in office, we've got to hold them accountable for doing what the people of South Carolina want done.
Absolutely. Attorney Tameika Isaac Devine joins us. She's been updating us on the Roe versus Wade decision here in South Carolina and the neighboring states, North Carolina and Florida, and just updated us about Kansas. Before you go, I do want to ask you, Tameika, do you think that other states will follow Kansas's lead and put the decision on the ballot and give it to the people to make a decision?
I think there will be. I mean, I've heard some rumblings even, in the last week since that decision, of people talking about it, where, we have to understand that things make it on the ballot for us to vote for because our legislature decides that they want it on the ballot, though. Mm-hmm. So states where you might have a party or people in control who don't want to know that, they don't want to vote to say, well, the position I'm taking is in the minority. They may choose not to put it on the ballot. And so, that's going to be an interesting thing as well. I mean, sometimes you can get things on the ballot by petition. And so I know there are some states that will be looking at doing that. And so that'll be huge voter education and engagement to get things on the ballot by petition. But, I think that there will be more states, but the Kansas, both sides even said that they were surprised at the margin that won by. And what I think that tells us, that confirms the data that a lot of people have discounted up to this point, as far as the data that says the majority of Americans believe that a woman should have a right to choose. And so when you have a majority of Americans who believe that Roe versus Wade should never have been overturned, you're going to get more people really anxious. And so that also goes to say, we need to look at what happens in the, less than 100 days away from the midterms, how people get galvanized to elect different people in office. You've got, Georgia, our neighboring state, also has a 6-week ban, but we have Stacey Abrams running for governor there. We've got, Raphael Warnock, who is in a heated, campaign for U.S. Senate. And so, Georgians, I know, are, I'm in contact with those folks as well. They're very motivated. And this Roe versus Wade, in addition to those other big races, are on the ballot. And so I think it'll be telling to see what happens this election cycle in the midterms. And then based on what happens this election cycle in the midterms, I think will determine whether or not you see more states actually putting this question on the ballot.
Yeah. Tamika Isaac Devine joins us. Thank you so much for sharing the information. Thank you for staying updated. Thank you for caring, about the, what's happening in our world, despite the fact that you are no longer political. You are still a community. You're still so very much dedicated and motivated to be a positive source in the community. And listen, girl, that's what it's all about. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I say I'm forever public servant, and I tell people some of the things is like really, y'all have given me now more time to fight for things like this. So
that's right.
I'm going to continue to be out there. But thank you so much for continuing to keep people engaged, and I encourage people to contact your elected officials about any issue, but definitely this issue is critical, and this is the time that they need to hear from you.
All right. Tamika's going to join us again when there's more to update us about, and we'll be right back with more Coping with Tre Tailor.
The Comet gives me a reliable source of transportation.
It's very convenient to me, and they have wonderful drivers.
It's clean, and it builds community. It's fun to meet people.
It makes me feel like really independent. It's just fun.
Comet's always going to be there, and it gets me everywhere I need to go.
We try to ride every single day. Comet is our livelihood.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Sawyer, an entrepreneur and caregiver. Part of taking care of your health is knowing if you're at risk of type 2 diabetes. Prediabetes is serious and puts you at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. Up to 90% of South Carolinians who have it don't know they have it. Visit inittogethersc.org. Take an online test to find out your risk and join a diabetes prevention program. This message brought to you by the Diabetes Action Council of SC.
Computers, they're a part of our everyday lives, but when they're not working, they're an everyday problem. So call Computers Unique, your everyday solution. 803-351-5821. Is your computer running slow? Won't turn on? Do you need a screen replaced? Or maybe you just need another computer? Well, Computers Unique is your one-stop shop for all your computer needs. They have a wide variety of new and pre-owned PCs, Macs, and tablets. So call Computers Unique, Dutch Square Mall, 803-351-5821. 803-351-5821.
Thank you so much for joining us for Coping with Tre Tailor, giving you info and advice to help you thrive and survive in this here life, because we will always be coping with something. Hey, don't forget, we are streaming live on the Tailor Made Production page on Facebook. Please go over there, hit like and share and follow. Not only will you be able to get notifications as to when we go live, Wellness Wednesday, which is every Wednesday from In It Together SC and the Diabetes Action Council, and then of course on Thursday and Friday. We're also streaming live on our YouTube channel. Please go over there and hit the subscribe button. You will find almost 3 years of content, information, and also interviews to help you cope. Also, we've got a presence on Instagram and also on Twitter. You're watching the award-winning Coping with Tre Tailor. I'm Tre Tailor, and we've been talking today about Roe versus Wade and the updates. Holliday joins us. She is one of the African-American women founders of Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote. It's a nonprofit that's a voice for the interests of Black women and their families. They also support issues and policy that affects the well-being of economically disadvantaged communities. Holli, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for doing and providing this information to your audience. It is so critical right now.
Yeah, absolutely, girl. That's what we do here. We give people the information they need, especially here on social media where there's so much misinformation. So let's get the facts straight. What are the updates? And of course, we talked to attorney Tameika Devine earlier in the show that gave us some updates about South Carolina. But can you tell us any other updates state by state as to what's going on with Roe versus Wade?
Yeah, well, listen, first and foremost, I want to make sure people have an accurate place to get good information because to your point, things is changing, y'all, and they changing very rapidly. So abortionfunds.org will allow you to not only see updates, but more importantly, connect you with places should you need abortion services, provide you funds should you need funds, and just generally tell you what you can do to be safe and to have the information you need, whether it is funding, whether it is medication, transportation, lodging, childcare, doula, or even more fundamentally, just emotional support. And I think that so many times we have equated this to a legislative or an election issue that we forget that this is an issue that impacts real women like you and I. It impacts real families and how people, men and women, are making decisions about their families. So I want to make sure that first and foremost, we are clear about that. I think that is just so important.
So it's abortionfunds.org, and we're going to put it up on the screen.
Abortion, no S, funds with an S.org.
All right. And people from any state can go there and get the information and resources.
All 50 states, and they will be able to tell you what is going on. Awesome. And so, I think when we think about the legislation, to get to your point, we think about it in a couple of different spaces. First and foremost, we think about it from a standpoint of what's known as trigger bans. And so trigger bans are those states that had legislation already on the books that when the Dobbs decision came down, which is the decision that overturned Roe versus Wade, that they had some trigger, the Dobbs decision being the trigger that instituted certain restrictions. And so when you think, so there are about 13 states that fall into that category. Most of them are in the Midwest. So states like Idaho, with Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Missouri, my home state, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, and West Virginia. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it made it illegal, but it does mean that there were some severe restrictions put in place. And they range from being illegal and criminal to just very strict, other just very restrictive things.
Right. So these 13 states already had policy in place.
Right. Exactly. And then the next set of states to think about is what we call pre-viability bans. And pre-viability bans are very specific restrictions on who has access, usually around the number of weeks of your pregnancy. And obviously, the lesser the weeks, the more restrictive we see these things. And again, somewhat different set of states. You get Arizona, Colorado. This is where Florida, West Virginia, and even the state of New York start to get triggered. Now, many of these are in pre-law status, meaning they haven't been passed yet, but they're being considered. And then there is what I think, and then there is a lot of things that have come up around what I refer to as, because we think of abortion, we really think of just the medical procedure.
Yeah.
But now, technology and medical advancement, there's also the medication abortion and the self-managed abortion, which also happens through medication. And so abortion is no longer just going to see a doctor and having a medical procedure or a surgical procedure. It also involves medication. And so we're also seeing bills come up about this. This is like things you may have heard of, like Plan B, which doesn't require prescription, or the day after pill. And so this is also considered now part of abortion for many states. And so thinking about that. And then I think the worst of all that people have talked about has been the bill in Texas, which is what they start to look like. They give policing power, give people the power to police others. This is where you're getting into the criminality. This is the worst of the worst. And we definitely are seeing copycat bills of this across the United States. And so to see what's happening in your state, you at the abortionfunds.org website, they do have a state tracker that will show you the bills, that will give you also just any information that you need about any decision or any advocacy that you may want to do. So that's where I would definitely go for key and truthful update information. That's the key. And that's what I love that you're doing this segment.
Absolutely. Holliday joins us. She's with Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, which provides and advocates for African-American women and their families in the area of education about issues, candidates for political office, and the political process. She's joining us today to talk about Roe v. Wade. I'm Tre Tailor. You're watching Coping. We're giving you information and advice all the time to help you thrive and survive in this life, because we will always be coping with something. Now, you mentioned this a little bit, Holli, and I want to kind of dive into this. What do people need to know if they do want to end a pregnancy in this Roe v. Wade era? Do they just go to the abortionfunds.org website to find out where they can go legally and safely?
Yes, absolutely. I would say, listen, don't wait until you know what your decision is.
Okay.
The key for me, in my opinion, is we need help along the process.
Yeah.
If you are concerned and confused and you really just need unbiased help, the folks that are working in this network is not about advocating for a woman to choose an abortion. That's not what it is. This is about making sure that you have access to your complete range of medical options. Mm-hmm. And so at the moment that you are even contemplating having a child, at the moment that you are concerned about whether or not you should have a child or shouldn't have a child, this is when you want to be seeking out help.
Yeah.
And if you are a caregiver or support system for someone who is facing that choice, you should also be a part of helping to seek people out, because we know that these family decisions go well beyond just the person who's having the baby.
Absolutely.
Although we want to make sure that we center that person, but we know those decisions have repercussions and have impact well beyond that. And so we want everyone to have access to good information here.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Holli, because I was going to ask, what do people need to know if they need to assist someone, if they're driving someone, if they're giving advice to someone? And I know you mentioned that there are getting ready to be laws in place to penalize those folks too.
Absolutely. Well, I think first is figure out where you can get good information. You should look, I start with just the basics. First, figure out where you are from an insurance standpoint. If you are insured, does your insurance cover this? If you have Medicaid in particular, this is going to be a state by state reality for you, depending on what your state does. So I think first and foremost, let's figure out where you sit and where your support really lies. If your insurance does cover it, then I would look to start to reach out to clinics that are closest to you. Mm-hmm. And this is where the abortionfunds.org can help, because you can simply put in your zip code and they'll let you know. You should be prepared If you live in a state where there are not, because even in states where it's legal, there are very few clinics.
Right.
Okay. So it happens to still be legal in the state of Missouri, but we only have 2 abortion clinics.
Wow. The
2
whole state.
in the whole state. There are many states where there's just 1. And so even though this may be legal in your state doesn't mean that it's going to be convenient.
Right.
Whether
right.
you have insurance or not, whether you have access to transportation or not, funds have now been raised and made available to help you. So the one thing that I definitely want to communicate is don't let your choice be strictly about whether or not you can have access to be able to afford it in this moment. There are funds available for you, and the funds range from paying for doctor's visits all the way through paying for transportation and other support care. So again, the one-stop shop of abortionfunds.org is a great place to do it. And I should say, this isn't this site is a collaborative and a part of a coalition of a range of organizations that have all contributed to it, because we recognize the importance of not having women who are facing these choices have to go every which way. And
Right.
so I do want to point out that the medical and support community and advocacy community have pulled together to support this site to ensure that everyone had a one-stop shop to be able to get the information that they needed in order to make the decision that works well for them and their family.
Yeah, and that abortionfunds.org website is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. So please post and share so we can get the message to the masses, because that is such an essential resource, for folks who are considering, as you said, pregnancy or ending a pregnancy, and anyone in their circle that is going to assist. And, it's really crazy that people who just want to help somebody are under the gun.
Right.
The threat of hurt or harm or danger or incarceration, fines, whatever, to them is scary. It's really scary.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about the misinformation on the internet. I want to really caution people, because once you start searching some of this on your computer, you will get targeted by various ads that will come through your social media.
Wow.
And
Yeah, you're right.
And so please be careful about advertising that you may see that come through your social media, or ads that you may see in the phone book, because just because they have an expensive ad or because they're targeting you doesn't mean that it's a real clinic, number one.
Right.
We've seen a lot of kind of anti-abortion type medical facilities advertise towards vulnerable vulnerable women.
Yeah.
And then they get there and it's really like a brainwashing kind of operation that kind of keeps you out. So think about—
And predators, it's predatory.
It's predatory, absolutely. So this is why I say, try to reach out to a support system. Think about names that have a deep history in this, like Planned Parenthood or the National Abortion Federation. So these are folks who can be trusted because they've been doing this for a very long time. And so think about that and just don't get, unfortunately, there are too many entities out there that will prey upon us as people in our most vulnerable state. So be cautious about that.
Yeah, Holliday joins us. She's with Sisters Lead, Sister Vote. The organization promotes the civic participation and community leadership of African American women and their families, and engages and organizes our community locally, nationally, and online to stand for the issues, policies, and people that impact the lives of Black women and their families. I'm Tre Tailor. You're watching Coping with Tre Tailor. Listen, we'll always be coping with something, so we're giving you info and advice to help you make it through this life. Holli, you mentioned that there are still several states where abortion is legal. Missouri is one of them. What are the other states?
Oh, let's see. There's actually many states where abortions are still
Okay.
legal.
Okay.
And I think, but again, legal is a misnomer.
Right.
So I just want to put that out there that
Yeah.
legal is a misnomer because we think about it again in terms of the medical procedure, but there are different states of legality. So I don't want
Wow.
people to say, oh, I can go to California
Exactly. Yeah.
where it's legal. Well, yes, but there still may be restrictions. So I encourage people not to think of their state as legal or not legal. This a little bit too black and white. And instead, think of how you can get help and where that help is the closest. And
Yeah.
so, yes, there are states where it is legal, Pennsylvania, for instance, Maine, New Hampshire, New York, Illinois, California. I mean, there's lots of states where it's still legal. There's most states still allow you to take the day after pill or do a medical or self-medicated induced abortion, which is available in the very early weeks of pregnancy.
Right.
And so there are still a lot of options, and I would just stress that for people. But understanding what your options are very dependent on your location. And so that's why you really need to have a guide so that you know what's available to you. And if it's not available to you in your state, something that this administration, President Biden, Vice President Harris have made sure of is that there is not a federal limitation of people crossing state lines in order to get the care that they need. One of the first things they did was put an executive order in place to prohibit a federal to allow that access. And he and the Department of Justice have been vigilant in shutting down any attempts to limit you from being able to go to another state to receive the services that you may need.
Wow. And of course, we've got abortionfunds.org. That website is in place, as Holly told us. If you need more information, resources, advice about where, how, what, the whole who, what, where, when, and why, as far as getting an abortion, abortionfunds.org. You can see that information scrolling at the bottom of the screen. What else do we need to know, Holly, about this? We are going to talk with a couple of agencies around the country later on this week that handle procedures like this. And so there are implications for them too. But what else do we need to know as we navigate these waters?
Well, I would not be who I am and do what I do at Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote if I didn't also call attention to the fact that we're going to start seeing this issue on the ballot.
Yeah.
We certainly
Kansas, I think.
Yes, we just had it in
Yeah.
Kansas last week, which those voters voted it down. So we want to say thank you to the enlightened people of Kansas for doing that. But that was just a sample. That was just a shot across the bow. They went to Kansas because they thought that was a state that they had locked up, that they had a lot of support for. But they found out that even this is not really following along traditional party lines the way people thought it would. And so they're learning, and we are too, that this is not just a Democrat issue or Republican issue on the anti side.
Right.
This is an issue about how people are choosing to make decisions. And what they realized was they went a step too far, because while people may have feelings specifically about abortions, that when you start talking about abortion care, what you're really saying is that we want to take us freedom away from women, of women's freedom to choose to make decisions about their own families and lives. And nobody wants their freedoms taken away. Nobody wants their liberties interrupted. And so the one other thing I would share is that, let's pay attention to what's on these ballots. Make sure, and by the way, the wording, let's use Kansas as an example here. The wording in Kansas was protect them both. It was the Protect Them Both Amendment. But actually what it would do is, in the Kansas Constitution, It is illegal for the legislator to pass laws dealing with abortion. It is illegal by their own state constitution. And so in naming it the Protect Them vote, they thought they could invoke folks who would want to protect the lives of the mother and the lives of the baby to get them to allow the legislature to start passing legislation.
Wow.
But people actually felt duped. They were insulted by that, and they did not want their freedom and liberty interrupted, because that's how it's written into the Constitution, that the state legislature shall not inhibit a person's right to choose,
right.
Freedom to choose, actually freedom to decide their own decisions and their own family planning. And Kansas said, yes, we're standing up to protect that freedom that is guaranteed to us in our state constitution.
Yeah. And you know what? Wording is everything. Wording is everything. And making sure that, you know, you're aware and stay involved in the political process. And that's such a big deal. That's such a big deal. And I know
representation matters.
Yes, it does. I was gonna say, I know that's your thing, you know, the whole voting thing. And we have just got to be more conscientious about going out to the polls and voting.
Yes. Yes.
You know, it's one thing to sit at the barbershop or even be online and, you know, be a thugger, you know, but that makes no change. That makes no change.
We need everyone to be registered to vote. And this is a great opportunity to take time to make sure that your registration is in order. And then we need you to make a plan to vote. You know, Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote is part of the Unity campaign with the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. And the big campaign that they're running right now is Are You Vote Ready? So that you know you're registered to vote and that you actually have a plan to vote. That's another space where they keep changing stuff around. So you want to make sure you know where the poll is. You may consider voting by mail to make it easier, or by Dropbox. But we need you to be paying attention and voting. And if you really want to get engaged, find an organization to support. Find a candidate that you feel passionate about. Our democracy works at its best when our voices are participating in it, and at its worst when we sit home and do nothing.
Absolutely. Holliday is with Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote. Tell us a little bit about the organization. You've been telling us about it the whole time. You've been here.
And you have been a great hype woman. Listen, I need you on the road with me when I go talk to the funders, okay? So Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote. We started because what we recognized was that Black women had something to say, and that their voices were missing in too many political spaces. Not just because they're not elected to those spaces, but because even their participation was not always welcomed, and we needed them in those spaces. So our goal at Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote is any space that impacts Black women and their families. We want to make sure that Black women are present. And so, of course, we know historic things like just behind me here this way, the work that we did with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. We are now, looking at the Senate. We do not have Black women represented in the Senate. And when I say women, it is not just one. We need multiple voices.
Right, exactly.
But we also are working with, everyday women, because their voices are just as important. We're getting ready to launch a big op-ed project where we're going to be encouraging women from every industry to feel empowered to be a part of our editorial pages, because those things matter, to be a part of using their own social media to elevate their opinion into the discourse. When we participate, things change, and we are influential and powerful, and we just want to encourage people to use it.
Yeah. If people want more information about Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, we can see the information on the screen. Are there opportunities, Holly, for people around the world, women and men, to engage, volunteer, and be activated with
Absolutely. And they can go to our website and sign up. As I mentioned, we're actually going to be having some classes to help train people on how to write op-eds. We'll also have some classes starting in September around how to more effectively use your social media for advocacy. And so we're just getting started.
Awesome. Well, I know you're super busy, but hopefully you can come back the beginning of September or the end of August to tell us all about that and how people can get involved with that. We would love to share that with the
Absolutely.
audience.
Thank you so
Holli
much
Holliday.
for having me.
Holli, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and join us. Holli Holliday is one of the African-American women founders of Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote. As I said, it's a nonprofit that's a voice for the interests of Black women and their families. They also support issues and policy that affects the well-being of economically disadvantaged communities. Her information is on the screen. Please log on to the website, check it out, and find out all that they are doing. Holli Holliday, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much for joining us today on Coping with Tre Tailor. I'm Tre Tailor. We'll be right back with more.
Computers, they're a part of our everyday lives. But when they're not working, they're an everyday problem. So call Computers Unique, your everyday solution. 803-351-5821. Is your computer running slow? Won't turn on? Do you need a screen replaced? Or maybe you just need another computer? Well, Computers Unique is your one-stop shop for all your computer needs. They have a wide variety of new and pre-owned PCs, Macs, and tablets. So call Computers Unique, Dutch Square Mall. 803-351-5821. 803-351-5821.
Thank you so much for joining us for Coping with Tre Tailor. If you have a product or service that could help someone cope with COVID, please email copingwithtreitailor@gmail.com. We would love for you to be a proud sponsor, just like In It Together SC and the Diabetes Action Council. They sponsor Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday here on Coping with COVID. Javis Tax Services, Palmetto Media Connections, the Fifth Circuit Solicitor's Office, Attorney Byron Gibson, Agape Counseling and Training Services, Black Pages, Black Expo, the Comet Bus System, and Computers Unique, Dutch Square Mall. We also would love for you to be a guest on the show. If you have a story or initiative that could help someone cope with COVID, please email booking@copingwithtreitailor.com. Booking@copingwithtreitailor.com. That information is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. We would love to feature you on the show because we're always coping with something. As always, we leave you with a great devotional. I'm reading back again from Jesus Calling. This says, when things seem to be going all wrong, stop and affirm your trust in me. Calmly bring these matters to me and leave them in my capable hands. Leave them there. Then simply do the next thing. Stay in touch with me through thankful, trusting prayers, resting in my sovereign control. Rejoice in me. Exult in the God of your salvation. As you trust in me, I make your feet like the feet of a deer. I enable you to walk, to make progress upon your high places of trouble, suffering, or responsibility. When things are going wrong, remember what is right. Jesus, he can do it for you. Thank you guys so much for joining us today for Coping with Tre Tailor. Until the next time, I wish you peace and abundant blessings. Take care, stay well, God bless. And if you're going to be out and about with large crowds, especially inside, don't forget to wear your mask over your nose and under your chin. I'll see you soon.
Coping, find peace of mind to survive through whatever. Coping, learning the way that we thrive all together. Coping, finding out what's real. Coping, we can heal, we can heal, we can heal. Coping with stress, coping with strife, bringing hope for success, for improving our life. Coping beyond hoping to do more than survive, ways to live a healthy life. Coping and promoting, learning what you can do. 6 ways to a better you.